You're listening to If Only I Were Wiser podcast, where Raina Wilson brings together wisdom and raw life stories to provide encouragement and truth. So many times it's easy to become discouraged in your own pursuit of health because your story or circumstances look drastically different from your favorite influencer or even the expectations you had for yourself. If that is you, welcome! This space is for you to learn, breathe, and maybe just listen and see what wellness could look like for you. Hey friends, welcome back to the If Only I Were Wiser podcast. On today's episode, I have special guest Nina Boyce. Nina is a certified fertility awareness educator and health coach who teaches women to prevent pregnancy hormone-free with 99% accuracy. Her online coaching program, Luna, focuses on helping clients transition off of birth control, support their natural hormones, and prevent pregnancy with the Fertility Awareness Method. In today's episode, we chat about myths surrounding the Fertility Awareness Method, tips and tricks to getting started, and ways to make your fertility your best superpower. So let's dive in. Hello, Nina. Thank you so much for joining me on the If Only I Were Wiser podcast. I can't wait to dive into this topic.
Yes, I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
For sure. Can you just start by sharing a little bit about you, what your family looks like, what's your regular rhythm right now?
Yeah. So we recently moved from Columbus to Cleveland, Ohio in January. So our situation actually looks completely different than it did previously. We are living with my mother-in-law while we search for our house. And I used to have childcare in Columbus, and we decided to kind of pause that while we were in this transitional period. So, right now, it looks like me and my husband, who both own our own businesses, and we are trying to work out like working from home with having our almost 2-year-old at home and also running our businesses while also hopefully like looking for a house here this summer. So, it's been a bit different than what it normally looks like in my life.
For sure, just all of the things all over the place,
Mhm.
which I feel like is just life in general, but we like tell ourselves that, oh, once I just get past this, then like life will be normal.
Totally. And then something else comes up, that is the rhythm of life,
Oh,
right?
definitely. So, can you start by sharing a little bit about your background, your area of expertise, and how you kind of got started?
Yeah. So I am a certified fertility awareness educator and hormone coach. I got started, I really need to look back and see like when I began this journey, but I started health coaching when I was actually a middle school teacher. I used to teach middle school choir, I think 8 years ago now. I need to
Mhm.
double check that. But I really got into this work because of my own health issues. I was going through a lot of my own hormone struggles, anxiety, gut issues, cystic acne. I mean, my body was just basically giving me all the signs that it needed a lot of attention. So
Right.
I started looking into that. I started to get into nutrition and meditation and yoga and trying to heal my body. Became so addicted to it because I was starting to feel so much better that I got my health coach certification. And through that is when I really decided to focus in specifically on women's health and hormones. And now I added on my fertility awareness educator's certificate. So I focus mainly on helping women transition off birth control using the method for birth control accuracy,
Mhm.
or to help them conceive or to chart just for health. So that's kind of my main focus now at the moment.
I was first introduced to Fertility Awareness Method right before my husband left for Ranger School because we were hoping to get pregnant. It was in the middle of COVID. The Army was not going to send us to a doctor as I was transitioning off of birth control with horrible, 10 years of experience.
Mm.
So I picked up what looks like, the large textbook on
Taking charge of your fertility.
yes. And
Yeah.
I realized, I think, oh, I can't get pregnant every day of the month.
Shocker. None of us learned this. How is that a thing?
Yeah, which is just so crazy. So, can you start out by sharing just some of the basics of what FAM looks like, for someone that would love to get started or has never heard about this before?
Yeah. So, at its core, fertility awareness method is a way to identify your fertile and infertile days of the cycle. Because, as you mentioned, you technically are only fertile 5 to 6 days on average out of the month. And so it's really understanding how can we hone in on those 5 to 6 days out of the month, and then what special protocols and whatever method you choose is going to teach you the most effective way to avoid pregnancy during that time and anytime kind of leading up, as we can't totally predict those 5 to 6 days leading up. We have to kind of be cautious in that first half of the cycle. And then after we've confirmed ovulation, then you have an entire second half of the cycle where you do not have to worry about getting pregnant. And so the way we do that is through biomarkers. Your body produces what's called cervical mucus that tells you when you're fertile. You also have something called basal body temperature, and your temperatures fluctuate according to what phase you are in the cycle. So, just very briefly, low temps are in the first half when you're fertile, high temps are in the second half when you're no longer fertile. So, we're able to use these clues amongst other things and protocols to help you avoid pregnancy without having to use birth control or an IUD or even rely on barrier methods like condoms all the time.
Hmm.
It's a really effective way if you're interested in going that route.
Definitely. What has it been like for you to make this transition for yourself personally?
Oh my gosh. So when I was on birth control throughout my college years and then a little bit into my years as a teacher, and I just felt completely disconnected from my body, and there are a lot of known side effects of using birth control. Some people notice worsening mental health, physical health, gut issues. Just in general feeling that disconnect from their body and their natural hormonal rhythm. And so when I decided I really wanted to start this health journey, I wanted to get back on track, one of the first things I did was get off of birth control because I knew that it wasn't supporting my body in any way other than not getting pregnant. And so when I
Right.
knew there was this other way, I was committed to learning it and implementing it into my life. So once I did that, I mean, I felt like everything really for me personally fell into place. Now, when you're on birth control, it can mask underlying hormone symptoms. So a lot of
Right.
that came back up. I had to then address like, why is my body struggling? How can I repair my gut? How can I eat in a way that supports hormone balance? And then on top of that, what can I do and how can I learn to use my cycle and use my hormonal clues to prevent pregnancy? So everything
Mm.
shifted and changed after that. And of course, now I'm a huge advocate, right? So it's like I've decided to teach it. But it was an incredible transformation for me.
How would you say that it compares to, especially coming from a place of you only knew, or similar to my story, like I only knew birth control. I knew nothing outside of,
Yeah.
try not to get pregnant. Like I think of that Mean Girls scene where it's just like, don't have sex because you'll get pregnant and die.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's all we know. I feel like because I was taking a course in health, and then
Mm,
on top of that, at that time, I took an extended course on hormone health. Um, I was doing so much research that I was like, this makes sense. I was
right.
like, oh, I get this. But at the time, oh my gosh. I mean, especially in college, like it felt like a rite of passage. Like, oh, it's time for me to start birth control. Like I have this ability now. I'm gonna go make my appointment. You don't know what you don't know. So as
Hmm.
soon as you start learning that there might be this other way and you begin researching, that's when it all clicks. And you're like, wow, my body was designed to do this if it's something I choose to do.
Right. And I think there's just so much, like you said, lack of education. Like, I didn't even have the knowledge of what I was experiencing in my symptoms while I was on birth control were things that I was not informed of during my appointments.
Yeah.
Like the weight gain, my mood swings. I
Hmm.
was diagnosed with clinical anxiety in college, not realizing it had been, oh, because I've been on birth control for almost 10 years. But that wasn't even a part of my conversation with my mental health
Hmm.
team. So it's just so interesting to kind of dive into autonomy over the body, and especially for women's health. And the first place that I even encourage friends is like, if you want to start with your coolest
Yes.
superpower, is like, know your cycle. Like, just start with your cycle.
It is. It's like our hidden superpower.
If you were to be speaking to someone who has never really kind of looked into this, or how would you encourage somebody to take the first steps towards implementing this in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming?
Well, I first want to say if you're currently on hormonal birth control, whether that's like the hormonal IUD or you're taking the pill or something like that, you're not going to see the same biomarkers as somebody that's off hormones. So you're like, what
Right.
is this cervical mucus? I think I see something maybe when I'm on birth control, but it's not going to be the same. And that's because when you're on hormonal birth control, you're getting a low, steady dose of synthetic estrogen and progestin or just progestin, and that's going to change the way your cervix responds to fertile quality mucus. That's what the pill's designed to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's prevent it. So once you decide to get off, or if you decide to get off, what you'll notice is your body goes through this very natural hormonal cycle every single month. So once you get your period, hormones are low. They begin to increase during that first half of your cycle. As estrogen begins to increase, your cervix gets the message to begin producing fertile quality cervical mucus. So you'll see changes, whether you see it physically or you feel it when you're wiping or when you're walking. You'll notice there's a shift from a more dry sensation to a more lubricative sensation. And I teach two categories, non peak and peak. So within those two categories, you'll start to see the differences for your body. Non peak looks a little bit more cloudy, like hand lotion, maybe a little sticky or tacky, whereas peak looks more like that typical egg white, clear, very stretchy sensation. Um, and after ovulation happens, that cervical mucus will dry up because of the hormone progesterone. So you'll start to notice, like, wow, my body does these cyclical things. When I'm seeing
Mm-hmm.
cervical mucus, I must assume that I'm fertile and I'm leading up to ovulation. And, you know,
Right.
of course, there's nuances within all of that depending on your body and how long you've been on birth control and if you have hormone imbalance. But generally, that's what you're looking for with that specific biomarker.
What about, you mentioned body temperature?
Hmm.
Like that's just something I'm tracking right now, alongside like cervical mucus.
Yeah. So basal body temperature is an incredible resource for tracking with Fertility Awareness Method. Essentially, you would I can teach sometimes like protocols where you don't have to temp every day, but that's when you get a little bit more advanced into doing fertility awareness method. But essentially, if you're doing an oral thermometer, it has to be a basal body temperature thermometer that, temps to the 10th degree or 100th degree. Um, you are going to take your temperature every morning as soon as you wake up. So, this is before you get out of bed, before you go to the bathroom. Ideally, you've gotten 3 consecutive hours of sleep before you take your temperature around the same time every day. And that
Mm-hmm.
temperature is going to be lower in the first half of your cycle because that's when estrogen is dominant and estrogen is heat suppressing. Now,
Hmm.
after you've already ovulated, what you're going to see is an increase in those basal body temperature. So ideally, you'll see like the picture perfect cycle is you're going to see this big, beautiful, like 0.5 degree jump up after you've ovulated or right before ovulation.
Right.
And once you see 2 to 3 high temps, you're going to confirm ovulation and you can kind of close out your fertile window. Again, this is very generalized. So don't like go and
Yeah.
take this and then be like, oh, I've seen 3 high temps, I'm not fertile. Make sure you're learning a method. But that's how we use basal body temperature to open or rather close the fertile window.
Yeah, I think you had posted something on Instagram the other week that was like, I can confirm that you will not get pregnant after this point.
100%. Yeah.
And I think that's so funny for some people because I think back even to my younger self, I would have seen that and been like, there's no way. Like,
Yeah.
my body knows that like it's just gonna like magically happen.
There's no way. And it's crazy because I'll have people that like people commented on that and they
Hmm.
said, well, what if I ovulate twice per cycle? Like, you cannot ovulate twice per cycle.
Right.
You can have very short cycles where it feels like you're getting your period a lot and ovulating a lot, but that's two different things. So
Right.
once you confirm ovulation is past, you have high temperatures, there's sustained high temps, you will not ovulate or you cannot get pregnant again until you roll around after your period to that next fertile window.
Right. Or I've even shared with a friend, like, I know that you could have some women have two LH spikes in their
Yeah.
cycle, which is also
Mm-hmm.
super fascinating.
Hmm. And LH is another clue that we can use to determine, opening, or not necessarily opening the fertile window, but getting as close as you can to ovulation.
So, like you said, super individualistic, very nuanced to know
Yes.
your body, know your cycle. So,
Yep.
how does this compare to other forms of pregnancy prevention? Because I think one of the first things I heard when I opened up that book to even start learning about this was a friend that was like, "This is what happened." She sent me a picture of her baby or whatever. "This is what happened when I
Yeah, yeah.
was using FAM." And
Totally.
so, what encouragement would you give there, or how does this stack up?
This is such an important point. I've actually been having this conversation with a lot of fertility awareness educators recently. Um, Most of the time when you hear someone say, and believe me, I get it all the time. I get it from, then I don't want to call them trolls,
Sure.
but like just people that are like, oh, I used this and I got pregnant, or that method doesn't work. It's
Right.
most likely because they were not following a specific method or the protocols within the method. Okay. So with
Okay.
fertility awareness method, yes, when done correctly, it is just as effective as the birth control pill. It is just as effective as the IUD. Now, what's the difference? With the pill or the IUD, it's out of sight, out of mind, right?
Mhm.
It's taking care of it for you. With fertility awareness method, you are in charge. You are in charge of your fertility, and that's one on one hand incredibly empowering, but it does come with some responsibility. And if you understand it correctly, then you are charting your biomarkers every day. That's one thing. Like you have to have a chart, whether it's an app or physical chart, and you need to mark down your cervical mucus observations correctly by the end of the day and make a decision. Like, okay, I saw cervical mucus.
Mm.
Am I going to risk it and have unprotected sex on this day? Or am I going to use a barrier method? Or am I going to abstain today? There's those types of decisions that you need to make in that first half of your cycle. Now, the cool thing is, like, for example, in my course when I teach fertility awareness method, you are given the rules and the protocols. So it's not like you have to do it on your
Right.
own. Like you're able to say, okay, I understand that once I open my fertile window and I see cervical mucus, these are my options. Here's what I can do to prevent pregnancy during this time. Or if I'm unsure, if I see cervical mucus or not, what are my options? What are the risks? And these are conversations you get to have once you dive into the method. I think a
Mhm.
lot of women assume, because this is what unfortunately a lot of people that aren't certified or just health coaches out there saying like ditch your pill, do family planning, natural family planning. They're like, oh, I can
Yeah, without the tools for it.
exactly, I can only get pregnant those 5 to 6 days, right? That's true, but if you're just assuming I've regularly ovulated around this time every month, I'm only fertile the 5 days leading up and the day of ovulation, that's when mistakes happen because people have unprotected sex earlier and maybe ovulation moved up a little bit or.
Yep.
So that's really what happens is they're following a quote unquote calendar method. They're not really doing
Okay.
fertility awareness.
Right. So, what about on the flip side of this? You said you also work with trying to conceive clients.
Mhm.
Can you dive in a little bit more about why are there only 5 days? When
Yes.
I've heard coaches that have said, well, ovulation is only what, 24,
24 hours.
but a lot of people don't understand that
Mhm.
there's a larger window than you think that some of those oopsies can happen.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're trying to conceive, the power of fertility awareness method is flipping all those rules, right? On top of their heads. Like when do I have sex? So
Right.
in that case, what you're going to be looking out for, right, is those 5 days where you're seeing cervical mucus, especially peak, because peak is going to be your most fertile, right? Leading up to ovulation,
Hmm.
the closest to ovulation. The reason that you have those days leading up is because cervical mucus is specifically designed, its pH level, the way that it is structured to nourish sperm, to like literally create highways for the sperm to get to the
Hmm.
egg fast enough. And also within the cervix, you have something called cervical crypts. And if you have sex those 5 days leading up to ovulation, the sperm hangs out. It like camps in these cervical crypts. And then
Yeah.
once the egg is released, it makes its merry little way over to the egg. Now, something I want to keep in mind if you are dry, right? So, this is when hormone levels are low. You didn't see cervical mucus, you didn't see it, feel it, wipe it, anything like that. Sperm will die within minutes to hours within the cervix because the
Mm.
pH level is too acidic. The sperm can't survive in a dry environment. So these are all things that you use whether you want to conceive or you don't want to conceive, right? You use this information about how cervical mucus enhances fertility and what it means about ovulation, and you use the rules to achieve your specific fertility goals.
Definitely. What would you say to the people that are like, well, can I get pregnant on my period?
Yeah. There's actually things called calculation rules, and they've been researched by many, many, many women across the world. And so if you've been charting your cycle off birth control for, I like to say, 6 to 12 cycles, um, research has shown if your cycles are 26 plus days, the first 6 days of your cycle are most likely infertile. Like, they're
Hmm.
statistically, unless you ovulate very, very early. Now, say your cycles are shorter than 26 days long. This is not, your full cycle.
Right.
Then calculation rules, we got to throw them out the window because you might be a really early ovulator. So
Mm.
somebody that has very, very short cycles, less than 26 days, I mean, maybe the first 2 to 3 days you wouldn't have to worry about, but honestly, who really
Yeah.
wants to have sex on like those heavy days of their cycle? But you probably could, but it's again, like you got to know your individual cycle, but for the majority of women, you can't get pregnant on your cycle unless you're a very, very early ovulator.
Yeah, that was super helpful just for our own family as we were navigating pregnancy postpartum. And maybe that's a different conversation
Mm,
because,
it's different. It's a whole game. It's a whole ball
okay,
game
yeah,
postpartum.
because that was, the first question, not, hey, how are you feeling today? Like after my C section, it was leaving the hospital. Okay, what form of birth control are you going to use? And I'm like,
Yep.
I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out how to take my baby home. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a common question.
How does this conversation play into postpartum?
So I have almost 2-year-old, so I've totally been there. The thing you have to keep in mind with postpartum charting is that your observations are very, very skewed because of a couple of different things. Number one, if you're nursing, if you're full on nursing around the clock, no bottle feeding, you most likely are going to have suppressed ovulation for 6 months and beyond.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Okay.
Now, in that case, there are ways to observe what you're seeing, right? So, like a lot of times, I'll assess with my postpartum clients how often are you breastfeeding? Like, what's your cervical mucus look like right now? And then, you kind of set protocols of like what to look out for. If you are
Okay.
bottle feeding, or if you aren't breastfeeding anymore, like I had a breast reduction and I was supplementing, and I actually ended up stopping breastfeeding around 7 weeks. So my cycle
Mhm.
came back very quickly. There's things you have
Right.
to look out for. So a lot of times, like you don't have that picture perfect pattern of low hormones, hormones rising, that first ovulation is coming, and then you've ovulated. It's more like estrogen rises a bit and then it falls and then it rises a bit. So you see like
Mhm.
some cervical mucus, then none, or a ton, and then it all, and it can get confusing. So there's specific things called like a non-dry basic infertile pattern that we're able to do, and or you just are cautious and you use barrier methods. It's really, again, it all depends on the family or the
Right.
partners and what their risk level is, what their intention is, how strict they want to be or how lax they want to be. So there's like I keep saying it, there's nuances with all of it, but it is a little bit trickier postpartum, but there's ways to get through that.
What would you say, I think you mentioned it a couple months ago and I just was like so blown away, are some of the benefits outside of just the pregnancy prevention conversation?
Mm.
Like we've said, it's a low-key superpower. So what are some of the benefits of FAM outside of just
Mhm.
this pregnancy conversation?
I feel like the pregnancy, getting pregnant or avoiding pregnancy is like almost the cherry on top. It's like, that is cool. Like, yeah, I can do that. But the benefits go so much further than that. Improved mental health. Well, our natural estrogen and progesterone supports our mental health. So if you are somebody that struggles with anxiety and depression, I've struggled with anxiety and also like struggled with depression postpartum. It is really amplified, I think, for women when they are on birth control, if they already are predisposed to struggling with that.
Mm,
So that's the first benefit. Physical benefits are gut health can improve. We know that birth control pill can affect the gut microbiome. It's been studied. So once you can take that factor out, and it's not the only factor. I think a lot of people are bashing birth control in like it's the worst thing ever for your health and like nobody should use it. I don't believe that. I just think we need to be more empowered in understanding what it does to the body. So like we can improve gut health. If we're
right.
struggling with underlying hormone imbalances, getting off the pill gives us the ability to hear what's going on, to see the physical symptoms of what's going on so that we can heal it. The benefit of that not only is you feel better, But if you do want to conceive down the line, it's like you have so much legwork to do if you're on the pill and then immediately try to get off and conceive because you haven't been able to listen and hear all of those things that might be going on. So if you're somebody that wants to conceive in the next 3 to 5 years, might as well get off and start like connecting to the body and listening. In addition to that, you mentioned like cycle syncing is super cool. It's like this thing that we are all starting to learn about is wow, I feel different on my period. I feel different in the early follicular phase. I feel like on top of the world during ovulation, and like I start to wind down during the luteal phase. So many women are seeing and hearing these connections and they are giving themselves so much more grace because they're not expecting to feel the same every day. Or they can choose to eat differently if they want during those cycle phases. They can choose to work out differently. There are so many experts. One of my friends, Courtney Keeping Balance, shout out to her. Yeah.
Oh, love her. Yes. We had an episode with her and she was incredible.
Oh, great. Yeah, she's amazing. But like, just learning that you can even harness the power of your workouts according to your cycle, like it's all incredible information.
Oh, for sure. And I think it's just been, like you said, such just encouragement to mentally be able to make the shift of now I have a say so in what's going on in my body. I can be more aware of these things and it's not shame or fear based. And I think so much of birth control, like you said, it's not, there's a
Mm,
time and place for it. But I think I wish I had had the knowledge of this is how your body works, period. Definitely didn't hear how any of this happened until I did the research by myself in my early 20s. Like you said, there's a time and place, but I think the consent and informed consent conversation plays so much into this because women don't understand there's so many other factors in this, especially if you're wanting to start to have a family. Like I remember when I first was recommended to have birth control for PCOS, I'm doing air quotes because,
mm, you don't think you have PCOS?
no. I remember my mom being so hesitant because she was like, "Well, if you're on birth control, you might not be able to have babies." Not understanding
Yeah.
everything else behind it. It was just fear-based. And then I just was on it because I thought, life was going to be so much worse if I got off of birth control versus learning some of the legwork, like you said, to be able to set myself up in a healthier place later.
Yeah, because what are the pros of conventional forms of birth control? The pros are they are highly effective, 99% effective, and you don't have to think about it. So if you are someone that in that season of your life, you're like, you know what? I don't know if FAM is right for me. I don't think FAM is right for everyone. Then that can be a great option is conventional forms of birth control. But having said that, I wonder how many women, if they knew that there was an alternative, like maybe some of them are like, I don't know if I want to take the pill, or like, I don't know if I
Right.
want to have an IUD. If they had the option of gynecologists saying, there's something called the Fertility Awareness Method. And by the way, side note, many OBGYNs think it is the rhythm method or the calendar method, which is, again, following your typical cycle patterns. They don't understand that people are teaching this effectively with these protocols in place. So I think if women knew there was this other option, maybe the majority or a large number of them would say, actually, you know what? Send me that resource for the person that
For
teaches
sure.
FAM or those books. And I will take the responsibility to learn it because that's the better option for me, for my lifestyle, for my health, for my mental health, physical health, whatever.
Absolutely. I think actually I can say confidently that if I hadn't have known and done my own research over my own body over the past couple years, coming out of the hospital, that would have been the first conversation I would have had with them was like, "Great, set me up for a prescription for birth control."
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm glad that you touched on the fact that we're not saying birth control doesn't work for everybody, just as FAM may not work for everybody. I think that's super important. Like,
Right.
you have the ability to choose and assess for yourself, and it's not just bashing, conventional forms of birth control.
Exactly. I mean, we both were on it, right? It both served us in a certain period of our own lives. So
Yes.
it's about having the option.
So, what, aside from we can dive into your resources, but what books or things have you enjoyed just learning, resources to kind of start delving into this area?
Yeah, we mentioned Taking Charge of Your Fertility. It's a great book. It is a big book, so it can feel a little bit overwhelming sometimes. Another book that I recommend and I kind of like better, to be honest, at this point, is the Plan workbook. It's a really, really great foundational tool. I often recommend it to my clients as something to that extend their education. So those are good. There's a lot of fertility awareness educators on Instagram sharing really helpful things with podcasts. So if you're somebody that
Hmm.
just wants to absorb the information and kind of gain the confidence you need, then start looking for those people. And I will mention, make sure you're finding someone that is a certified fertility awareness educator talking about these things and not just a health coach talking about these things, because they are going to come at it from two different angles.
Okay. Can you share a little bit more on that? Just like, I don't think I even would have thought about that, the difference between like a health coach approaching hormones and
Mhm.
someone who actually studies hormones.
I think, like, as far as a health coach doing hormones, I also was that, right? So it's like you as far as like hormone balance goes, that's totally fine. I think when it comes
Right.
to fertility awareness method for birth control,
Right.
that's where it's can get a little dicey, because I even remember before I was certified, I really was under the impression of, like, sometimes when we tell women there's only 5 to 6 days out of your cycle you have to have a condom, or you have to abstain. It's a little bit of false
Right.
information, because there are specific things you have to do before those 5 to 6 days to be the safest. Um,
Hmm.
and that might mean
Right.
abstaining every other day, because, like, for example, if you do have unprotected sex, arousal fluid and semen can mix in with cervical mucus and obscure observations. Lots of little things like that, or calculation rules. How do we use calculation rules? What if you don't have a picture perfect cycle where your chart doesn't raise 3 high temps after ovulation? That's where I feel like people don't understand that those things can happen. And so they paint this big, easy, beautiful picture of fertility awareness method. And sometimes people come into it and they are like, well, what if my cycle's all messed up because of birth control? Now, how do I do it? And so following an educator can help you get into those nitty gritties, as opposed to just don't have sex the 5 days leading up to ovulation.
Right. Right. Which is not, like you said, always true. That's where people send you pictures of their babies.
Exactly.
So, would you say then this is also for women that have irregular periods and they can still start with this?
Yes, I have a caveat to that, because the it is a little bit more challenging, just like postpartum. So if you have
Right.
irregular cycles or PCOS or something like that, can you do it? Yes. Do I encourage you to do it? Yes, because you can learn so much about your health and your
Right.
body. Like, getting off of birth control is going to help you then address the underlying causes of PCOS. I think that's amazing. Um, will you have less available days while you're learning? Probably, because at the beginning, you're going to have longer cycles. You're going to have a lot or no CM because of hormone imbalances of PCOS. So, if you're somebody that has irregular cycles, I do recommend, like, that's probably a good time to work with an instructor or be working on hormone balance while learning fertility awareness method. Um, and there is a method for anyone listening that maybe does have PCOS or irregular cycles. It's called the Billings method. There are specific FAM instructors that teach that. I actually don't teach that, but they are like they're cervical mucus only, and it's kind of cool. They can really help you dive into learning it that way. Although I do teach clients with irregular cycles as well. I just think that, knowing that there's other methods within fertility awareness method, like the Billings method, can be cool to look into.
100%. And like you said, this conversation is all about equipping women to make the best decision for themselves.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I didn't even know that cervical mucus could get that nitty gritty. That's so interesting.
Oh, it can get nitty gritty. Let me tell you, I honestly would love to get that certification too.
Yeah.
It's wild how specific you can get. Yeah.
Wow. So, what encouragement would you give to people that are hearing this and first of all are thinking cervical mucus, way gross,
Yeah.
and then are thinking through like, or maybe just overwhelmed about hearing all of these like biological markers that they have to look through or coming off of birth control? How would you speak to them in the overwhelm, just looking at this at face
Mm.
value?
It feels overwhelming now because you're just learning about it. And maybe you've been on birth control for so long that you've not seen or experienced what we're talking about. As soon as you experience it, it clicks. It starts to click.
Mm, yep.
So when you get off birth control, I can't tell you, like, so many of my clients will be like, "Oh my gosh, I just saw cervical mucus. I'm so excited, and it's on day like
Yeah.
9 of my cycle. It's working." It's like you start to realize that your body really does have a cyclic rhythm, and these things do happen naturally. So, if it feels overwhelming and you have no idea what we're talking about, as soon as you get off birth control and you start to work on hormones, you will start to see these patterns. And also,
Hmm.
it's not as difficult as it may seem to start to pick up on it. Like cervical mucus, like I said, I
Right.
teach 2 categories, non-peak and peak, and then there's dry. And then basal body temperatures, as soon as you learn how to read them and identify them, boom, it starts to click. So for those people that don't want to have the information overwhelmed, like sometimes podcasts and books and IG, like it can be a lot. But if you start to like kind of hone in on somebody that you think could be helpful, it's like you can find support out there and they can cut all that confusion out for you.
For sure. And I think this would be a great segue into what are other options for tracking these biomarkers outside of the typical, I'm thinking, basal body thermometer. Like Courtney during our episode shared about temp drop. Like, what are some of these other
Yeah.
resources? I wear an Aura ring. That's how I like their recent update tracks my
With the natural cycles.
yep, and a body temperature. So that's what our family uses right now. What are some other resources that you would encourage people that might make the transition a little smoother?
Yeah, I love Temp Drop. Like Temp Drop and me
Okay.
are like this. So
Yeah.
they're incredible. Temp Drop is a wearable thermometer. You wear it up by your armpit, you put it on before you go to bed. The reason that a lot of women like that is because it weeds out any disturbances in your sleep. So you're able to get the most accurate reading. So when I mentioned earlier,
Mm,
you need to wake up around the same time every day. You want to try not to pee right before you take your temp. You don't want to get out of bed. Sometimes that's a lot for women, and especially if they work night shift or they're postpartum or, they're a mom, whatever. It's like, I got a lot going on and I don't have the consistency for
that's
that. So
true.
Temp Drop's incredible. And then it syncs to my favorite app, which is called the Read Your Body app. That's the way that I chart my cycles. That's the app I recommend for everyone. It's super, super customizable. So Read Your Body and Temp Drop. In addition to that, like you can get any standard oral basal body thermometer. The Aura Ring does have a new update, right, with natural cycles. If you have the new Apple Watch, and actually I have a blog on this, so I'm happy to send it to you too. It's about like the Aura Ring and then
Yeah, for sure.
new Apple Watch and Temp Drop. They their new algorithm I think is usable for basal body temperature with the Apple Watch too. So lots of different resources.
Wow. Yeah, that would
Yeah,
definitely. That's so awesome. I didn't
it's
even
new.
know the Apple Watch had that feature. But yes, definitely so helpful. So, I would love just to hear about your resources. I've heard so many amazing things about Luna. But what programs and things do you offer to help encourage women and just create a healthy community for education?
Yeah. So Luna is my online fertility awareness method course. So it basically breaks down everything from getting started in your resources to like deep down, like how to identify cervical mucus, basal body temperature, luteinizing hormone, how to use it for pregnancy prevention, conception, or postpartum. And the real benefit of Luna is you get a complimentary 6-month coaching membership. It's a group coaching membership. So you can be in this like portal with all the other women that are learning. It's not on Facebook. I get that question so much. I hate Facebook. So it's
Yeah.
like not on Facebook. But you get to experience what the other women are charting. You get to look at charts. I get to coach you through there. We have 2 group Zoom calls a month. So it's a really, really great way to not only have that accountability and support, but also have the community of women who are doing it. So you have the ability to say, this does work because I'm in a community of women who are successfully using this. So that's
Mm,
Luna. And I do offer private coaching as well, but that's more for like wanting to do hormone balance and work on foundations of like nutrition, gut health, all that kind of stuff.
mm, That's incredible. This is awesome. Where can our community connect with you?
They can find me on Instagram at Nourished with Nina. And I do have a free training. So if anyone's interested in just learning a little bit more about fertility awareness method, I also talk about Luna at the end. It's a 60-minute free training, nourishedwithnina.com/FAM training. So FAM training.
Sweet. Nina, this has been so awesome. And I just can't believe that there's just so much. And I think we've only touched, the tip of the iceberg in this, but
Mm-hmm.
it's so encouraging and empowering to just even talk about learning your body in a new way.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This is my favorite topic of conversation. I could talk about it all day long. So I appreciate you
Definitely.
sharing and also, having this platform to educate women. It's so important. So thank you.
For sure. I have one closing question that I'm super curious to see how you'll answer, especially just with everything we've already shared. So, if you could provide any wisdom to your younger self or a community that is listening, what would you share?
Let's see. To my younger self, I'll answer that. And I guess this applies to the community as well. But just remember that your body is on your side. So even if
Mm,
you feel like you are in the depths of struggling right now, and I'm not diminishing that because I've been there. Remembering that your body was designed to heal. It wants to find homeostasis. It wants to find balance. And there are so many resources and people out there to help you get there. So just trust in your body, take small steps, and you will eventually start to feel better and reach your goals. Just keep that faith.
definitely. Nina, thank you so much. I can't wait to just dive into some of these things myself because I think one of the most encouraging things in my own fertility and family planning journey was making the first steps to even just understanding how my body works. And like you said, to have it all laid out in a course that will walk you through with a coach that has been where a lot of these women are starting makes all the difference.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And I'm just so excited to have been here and talking with you today.
For sure. Thank you so much. And we will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you for listening, friend. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you don't want to miss any wisdom or encouragement, be sure to subscribe to the show. And don't forget to rate and review. Your feedback means so much and helps our community grow. If you're looking for more wellness wisdom and free resources, head over to livingwiselywell.com or get connected with me on Instagram at wiselywell. And if you're looking for a break from the hurried health lifestyle, check out my Return to Rest resource for tangible ways to slow down and finally find rest.